Welcome to the Breaking Average podcast, the podcast designed to challenge you to break the mold that average has on the world. Each episode offers insights directly from those who choose to break average every day. Now for the latest insights, here are your hosts, Paul Gustafson and Barry Smith.
Welcome to the Breaking Average podcast. I'm Paul Gustafson and Barry Smith. How are you?
I'm doing well, my friend, and always good to be here with you. I know we're going to somehow come up with some ways to add some value today.
Yeah, I can't wait to get into some of the discussion today. We're going to talk about values, as you just mentioned. That's a key word for us. It's a key word for anybody in any role, especially a leader, right? So let's talk about why are values so important? Let's start with that question. What's significant about it? Why do we need values?
Well, I think you answered part of it right there with the word why. I think, you think about what's our roadmap for life. And I think for me, and it seems like values are coming out of everywhere. From everything I'm reading, everything I'm watching, everybody's talking about values right now. And I just love that. But I feel like the values we choose, and I know you got some thoughts on this too, but the values we choose, the values that we try and live by kind of becomes our creed. And to me, I really feel like our values are a foundation for life. And we build on that, right? We build on that for where we want to go, how we want to get there, who we want to become in the process. And it really becomes a set of filters. And in my opinion, and I know everybody kind of looks at this differently, but for me, it's something I can filter my decisions and my behaviors through. Am I in alignment with my values, my core values? So it's a great topic. I think in the last 2 months, I've probably come up with my top 5 like 5 or 6 times. So yeah. I'm still trying to nail that down. Yeah. But it's hard. So many things are important to us. So it's just finding those, 5 core. And I know you've done that. And maybe we'll get into that a little bit, but I'm close. I'm close. I want to get it right because it's that important. And if I can look at that core 5 values and just go, that's it, man. I mean, every decision I make, I'm going to filter through those values and it's either going to be in alignment or it's not. And if I were a bet man, I'd say if I'm in alignment with my core values, then I'm probably going to have a productive outcome. If not, maybe not so much.
It's spot on, right? So think about, I love that word alignment that you just shared. And think about what we talked about last time when we met, right? We were talking about boundaries.
Yeah.
And, inhibit, attend to what matters, inhibit what doesn't, keep that working memory. Well, really, we're talking about working memory today when you think about it, right, Barry? I mean, values, if your values are clear, it's going to help you. It's going to help you with your boundaries. It's going to help you on your decisions. It's going to help you in life. And here's the other thing. Do you remember when we went through Simon Sinek's Start With Why?
Start With Why, yeah.
That was pretty powerful, right?
It was.
And you and I just in this conversation today, we said, hey, why is this important? You said, well, Paul, you said it right there, the words why. Well, if we're going to start with why, I think it's a hard exercise, but it's an important one to do. But the truth of it is, I went back and reevaluated my why, and I try to refine it every year. And I'm in that process right now of, okay, really wanting to nail it down perfectly. And I realized that if my values aren't clear, I'll never get to my why. Mm-hmm. But when my values are clear, now I've got something that's compelling, that's, going to give me clarity in terms of what I'm going to do. Yeah. And not only that, here's the big why behind why I think values are important. Not only do I get clarity for myself, but I get clarity for other people around me. Right. I'm able to connect with those like you and I, right? We're on this podcast, and this connection that you and I have started years ago. How? Value match.
Yeah. Well stated.
That value match is critical for who we are, all of us. And so let's kind of unpack that. What's the value match that, kind of a process that you go through? What are some examples maybe of value matching that you've seen, that you've experienced? And we'll get into some practical stuff to help other people here in a minute, but let's start with that.
I think my initial response is going to be a word that I know you've never heard me use before, and that's environment. You know, when there's a values match, then you're in that environment conducive to growth. You know, I as I've grown, right, as you know, we've both been on kind of our own journey, but we've been doing it together for over a decade now.
Yeah.
And as I've grown personally and professionally, you know, I'm always looking at, okay, what did I do that worked? What did I do that didn't work? Why didn't it work? How can I make it better? What do I need to get rid of? You know, all those questions that we ask ourselves. And a lot of it comes back to the environment I put myself into. And I think you're spot on with the values match. You know, who do I want to spend time? What Charles Tremendous Jones say? And you know, John quotes him in the 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth, talking about the law of environment. And Charles Tremendous Jones says you'll be the same in 5 years as you are today, but for the books you read and the people you hang around with. And I know I've used that quote before.
Yeah.
But that's it. You know, so if I'm going to become the product of the 5 people that I'm spending time with, right, or however many that is, then I want them to be, you know, somewhat in alignment with my value beliefs, my core values. And so, like you said, I think we definitely made that connection. You know, when I finally land on my top 5, they won't be the same as yours, but I think there'll definitely be some connections there. And I think that helps us grow together, right? And we can kind of have a common theme. We can challenge each other's thinking. You know, I can live kind of vicarious through your core 5 because they're good. I've seen them, right? And I'm like, yeah, those are cool, but those are Paul's, you know, and I got to find Barry's. And I got a good feel for a couple of them that won't change. But I'm really going through this process of thinking, you know, trying to fill in the blanks. Is that really what I want? Which one do I choose over the other ones? If I got to choose between this value and that value, which value am I going to choose from? And it's challenging because there's so many good ones, right?
Yeah.
It's like, well, if I can only choose 5, I want the 5 that are going to matter most. So I'm still on my way, but I'll land there.
Yeah.
And when I do, I'll be sure to share it with you.
Well, let me ask you, maybe there perhaps a couple of values that people all share in common? I'll give you one. Maybe there's more. I know at least one. The value of life, right? So if we start with common ground, and, you know, especially, you know, we've got a lot of leaders listening or watching. If we're going to start with common ground, understand what the one value is that's going to make a difference for somebody else. And there may be more than one, right? But the value of life, we cherish the life. We want the best for others. We want others to advance forward. So that's an area to start. I think you can personalize this a little bit more, which is what we're talking about. Okay, that's great. You got a common foundation, right? You're finding that solid ground. You don't want to put this on sinking sand. You got to find that foundation. But then you can layer on top of it some of these other values, because now you get to construct. So once you get your foundation, I'm talking to a guy who knows about this stuff, maybe better than I do, right? So you got foundation, then you can construct. Talk about that. How that analogy, I think, really works here, doesn't it?
Yeah, and honestly, I think this is where I kind of get stuck in it, because to use your example, life. Okay, so I take life, the value of life. Yeah, sure, we all value life, but I'm thinking, all right, so how can I drill down on that a little bit? You know, is that too broad? Does that kind of catch everything? And I want to be more specific and intentional, right? I mean, yes. I want my 5 core values to be very clear. You know, there's nothing wrong with life, but it's so big, you know, and encompass things like impact, right? Health and fitness, you know, all those are just a couple of examples of what can tie back into life. And so, although life's a great value, and definitely one that, you know, we probably share with most people on this planet that are breathing. Yeah, I think on an individual basis, it's really finding something more specific, something that really resonates with you, you know, connects with your why, as we're talking about. And then how do those become values that you can really implement into your daily life? And again, really help you with your decision-making process and where your intentional efforts are in the impact that you want to have. So nothing wrong with life, but man, it's just too broad for me. I want to get specific on something that really connects with my why. Don't get me wrong. I like living.
Yeah.
But I want to be intentional.
Absolutely. So, okay. Yeah. You value life. That's great. But what is it? You know, right. So that conversation that we might have with somebody else, Okay, what is it? What else? What else do you value? What's greater? What part of life do you value the most? You value life. What part of life do you value the most? And here's the first part, right? So I want to connect with people who value life. That's first and foremost. But there's parts of life that I want to be clear on. I need to be clear on for myself, but for those around me, I want them to be clear on it too. Because once we're clear on that, what do we really value most out of life? Boy, then we can make some impact. We can change some things. And let's talk about change. Let's go to a story that you and I know really well. 2012, 2013. You tell me the year. I can't remember. Guatemala.
Yeah.
Somebody cast a vision, but visions can never be cast until you have values that are clear.
Yeah.
All right. So somebody had a value. They valued life. Yeah, great. But they valued change. They valued growth. They valued something different for their country. And they valued it so much, they stuck their neck out and said, can you help? Which is, Barry, let's talk about it. That might be the most difficult question to ask. Can you help? Right? It's hard sometimes to go to somebody and say, hey, can you help me with this? And so, but they did, right? So Guatemala Prospera. I'll let you kind of unpack more of that story, but you and I had a chance to go with, I forget how many coaches we had, but what a great experience it was. And it was tied to values.
It definitely was tied to values. Anybody familiar with John Maxwell, they know he's a big guy on values and the transformation. This was part of John's vision, this global transformation. And it starts with the values, values-based leadership, right? I was kind of looking back at some of my notes from, almost 10 years ago now and looking at some of those exercises we went through and some of the trainings that we did. But I think at the end of the day, and keep in mind that, this was the first of many trips now and many more to come where presidents of countries, are reaching out to John Maxwell and his organization and saying, come help us. You're talking about help me. And so he did. He put together, as I remember, it was about 150 coaches, you and I included. Yeah. And went down there just not know what it was going to look like, but we were just going down to serve. And what an amazing experience it was. But to go in there to a country, and one of my biggest takeaways was just how hungry that community was for leadership, for personal development, for an understanding of values. Because, it's not that they didn't have values, but they didn't understand it, in my opinion, my experience, they didn't understand it at the level to where it really makes a difference. Some of the things we're talking about, build the foundation for your life. And it was just unbelievable to go in there and teach on values, right? Teach on values. Yeah. I remember the value of forgiveness. Wow. Yeah. Oh my. Hot topic and seeing change. Wow.
Well, that's what's so cool about this. This is where I'm going to get excited. We went in, round tables, teaching laws of growth, 15 laws of growth, 15 values. And we can unpack those. I think the most significant thing that we taught, right? And we didn't really teach, we just facilitated. Yeah. Was the law of forgiveness. I saw, Barry, here's one quick story for you. We went to a school across town. It was a long drive and it was a private school. And when we got there, we met with the principal and she says, okay, we got teachers in here, but we have pilots. And I'm like, cool, you got pilots? Yeah, you guys, that's pretty awesome. We don't even have pilots in the United States. And then the English teacher that was there that was going to help us translate, she goes, they're called you call them bus drivers. So they were bus drivers. And I could tell we had a large group and not everybody wanted to they wanted to help the teachers. But Doug Grant, Doug Grant. Yeah. So Doug and I looked at each other and were like, hey, we'll get together with the pilots, because what we believed in was they're the first one to see some of these kids that come to school. They're the first in line. They're on the front line. Here's an opportunity for us to connect with them. So we went over there to the bus shack. Actually, it was a really nice building, but went over there and you could tell that they were just kind of uncomfortable. And we went through 3 different round tables. We were only supposed to do 2, and they got so hungry. But the one they got hungry the most was that second one, which was the value of forgiveness. And at first they were reluctant. I got to be honest with you. It's hard to talk about forgiveness. But as they talked about it, they realized, whoa, yeah. I think we started with the value of listening, then we did the value of forgiveness. And it was breakthrough. It was unbelievable. It changed their life, at least, hopefully for, forever. But it was significant, man. I remember Monica, she was our translator. We had Doug and myself, and we had, I forget how many bus drivers out there. And the reluctance that was there at the beginning was gone by the end.
Yeah.
And they were going to go home, and they all had something that they felt like, okay, forgiveness. This is a value that I'm going to care about. I'm going to teach it to my kids, because that was the whole point. It wasn't just helping them, but it was helping them with something that they could teach and bring to somebody else and teach that too. So I forget the numbers. Was it 18,000 people we ended up training that week?
Yeah, I think we impacted about 18 or 19,000 in those 3 days, but just kind of fast forward. And I know the vision that was cast, that part of the commitment, all those 18, 19,000 that we impacted, they'd agreed coming into it that they would in turn go out and at least do the same thing with 10 more people.
Yes.
Now we're talking about 18,000 people. We're down there in 2013. Just recently, and you heard this as well, John had originally cast that vision that if we really truly want to transform a country, we need to change at least 10% of their population.
Yeah.
There's millions of people in Guatemala. We started with 18,000.
Yeah.
And just recently, here in the last year, John made the announcement that 10% goal had been exceeded in Guatemala. And just, you look at what's going on, not only with the adults, the educators, but the way that's impacting the kids and so forth. And it's all values driven and just incredible. And I had similar experiences that you did on the value of forgiveness. I remember, one guy just, he started out the whole session, arms crossed, no smile, no frown, no nothing. Just, you could tell he did not want to be there.
No,
and by the time we had gone through the process, he's, hugging and high-fiving, and you watch that change. And what it tells me, what it told me and what it tells me is just the value of values, how they impact everything we do. And that's why I kind of start out talking about this is the foundation. This is the core of our playbook. That's why I think that's why they call it, refer to it as core values. These are the core of us. This is our why. This is our passion. This is what drives us. And, you can't underestimate the value of that. And to go back to a word that I used and you liked, alignment.
Yeah. Yep.
Man, you've got to have that. You've got to, well, you certainly don't, because some people don't, but I think if you truly want to succeed, be successful, and as we've been taught, be significant, you've got to be in alignment with those core values. And, like you pointed out earlier, be hanging around with people that have similar values. It's just going to keep you in that environment that's going to be positive.
Yeah. Yeah, this is so good. So, question for you. Have you ever done a vision board?
I've actually exceeded that and done a vision wall that I won't go completely into, but my idea was this. I'm a very visual guy. I'm a high I on the disc scale, so I'm very easily, distracted. And honestly, if something's not right in front of me, and that's a blessing and a curse, right? Because if it's in front of me, then that's got my attention, it's got my focus. And so, as I've been trying to do a lot this last year, especially, and set lofty goals for myself, and kind of been full transparency, struggling through that a little bit. I'm like, man, I got to keep my why in front of me. I got to keep the things that are important in front of me. So I've actually on a kitchen walls, I can look and see it right now, just off to my left. But I've actually got 17 pictures up on that wall that represent my family, my faith. There's actually a wedding picture with my wonderful wife, Cheryl, with John Maxwell's hand on the back of my head as he prayed over us. Mm-hmm. We got a few now that we just did a family holiday, and we added another grandson. We got to update a few more pictures, but that will always be, that wall will always be Cheryl and my vision wall. for what's important to us, for what we value, right? And the reason I love it is because that does change. Your core values might stay the same, but life changes, and we need an opportunity to kind of change with it, but stay again in alignment with what we believe in. So, as we kind of move through life as grandparents and everything else, we'll be able to keep that vision wall up to date, and just with the things that we really value, and be able to look at those, several times every day, especially for myself who works from home. I look at that wall 100 times a day for the constant reminders of what I value, what's important to me, and why I do what I do.
I just love that, man. That's powerful. So think about it. I'm sure we've got folks that are listening, watching. You've done vision boards. We've all done them. But the truth of it is, it's not really a vision board. It is, but it isn't. It's a values board.
Yeah.
It's values. If you're clipping out magazine pictures or scrolling through your iPhone and, printing out pictures and images of things that you care about, operative word, well, values, isn't that a value? And so you're identifying values that you are going to covet, you're going to pursue and persevere towards. And this is what we said earlier. Barry and I both really said this. You can't have vision without values.
Yeah.
You just can't. So yeah, vision, where there's no vision, the people will perish, but it starts with values. So yeah, let's have some fun. So I did a vision board. Again, they call it vision board, but it's really values. I did one back in, a couple of years ago. We had some fun. It was a vacation, and my wife we brought some magazines down and some poster board and some scissors and all that. And we just had some fun with my son, his wife, my wife, the four of us, each of us did our own vision board. And again, it's about values. So I'm going to pull mine from over here. Hold on a second. All right.
There it is.
So I've got it up here where I do the broadcasting stuff, and I'm looking at it like I've got some keywords in here. I've got innovation. That's a value to me. Order in the house, making memories, faith, trust. There's everything about this, even though there's vision elements to it, is all anchored to values, all of it. And I just want to encourage you guys, wherever you're at, if you're doing one of these things, it's a great exercise, but help yourself out by making sure that you're clear on your values. Maybe start ahead of time by identifying your value list. I like to have 5, right? So that's what I'm working towards. And I try to readjust. Barry, I go through this process of reevaluating my values all the time. It's not one and done. Let's talk about that. We grow up, values are instilled in us, right?
Yeah.
At what point did those values become your own?
Some do, some don't.
Right.
I think about, what obviously most of us are most influenced by our parents at home, maybe some teachers, when we're in our youth. But I think I definitely took the value of hard work, my work ethic I got from my parents.
Yeah.
Maybe even went overboard, but I know I got that from them. Look, we become a product of our product. We become a product of our environment. So we can't help it, good or bad, right?
Yes.
Pick up some of those things from our childhood. So it definitely starts there. I love the question, when do we take them over, as our own? And I don't think we take them, as you pose a question, I think we grow into them. We either grow into them or we don't. We either grow into them or we grow out of them in who we become.
So think about it this way. What if the values that are, so you're in a good environment, you're a kid. Those values are established by your parents, all right? And like you said, become a product of that, right? Raise a child as they should go and they won't depart from it. Great. But think of it this way. Those values are a gift and you have to choose to accept it.
Yeah.
just because it's there for you to, to look at, to evaluate, to consider, that's not enough. That's not enough. You've got to accept it. Accept that value. Is it important to you? Right? Understand the importance of it. Maybe there's a legacy of your family that's really critical, or a legacy of your environment, or some sort of DNA element that's been cast by somebody like a John Maxwell within a John Maxwell team, right? He does the John Maxwell team DNA. He's talking about core values, and it's your choice. You'll listen to it, you'll hear it, you'll see it, but you have to choose to accept it. And when you do, boy, some big things can happen. Like for Barry and I, what we experienced in Guatemala with the value of forgiveness. Because at first, right? But once he opened up and he accepted it, I saw the same thing. We saw that multiple times. Boy, it changes everything.
It does.
So, all right. So culture. Let's talk about how this ties to culture, right? You said environment. If I pick the right values, if I'm clear on it, then who owns the culture for any kind of company?
Honestly, I think the company does as a whole. To go back to what we were talking about earlier with alignment, right? Yeah. You cannot hurt it. Well, we talked about this before. I think we were listening to at the last leadership Maxwell leadership event, that you can't really create a culture. You can only be one. I love that statement, right? I think we brought that up on a previous podcast, but I think the values play into that. And if you have someone on your team, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a business. It could be a sports team. It could be a group of guys. If you've got somebody who's not in alignment with your value system, then that's going to be a cog in the wheel. I didn't tell you this, but my vision wall includes a picture of about, 14, 16 guys standing on a deck out in Colorado somewhere that was taken earlier this year, because I value that. And those guys are in alignment with my core values, even if I haven't identified them specifically. Yeah, I know what that is. And you take that as kind of a microcosm of the world we live in, but the culture that we have in that group, and maybe that's a conversation for another day, but you look at the culture that we were in for a week. We spent a week together up on that mountain, and the culture that we enjoyed was definitely built around aligned values. No doubt about it. Yeah. I love that. And this gets into the next part, right? Playlists. Okay. All right. Guys, we're trying to provide some practical help here. And I think this is really where it gets into it. Okay. Maybe you've heard the value discussion to some level before, and you're like, oh, this is nothing new. Come on, Paul and Barry, share something new. Well, hopefully we are. But I love this idea of your playlist, because the truth of it is that how do you value yourself? Right? And what's the message that you're sharing? What's the internal tape? What's it playing? I remember, Barry, in 2002, when we were 2 years into our business, and we almost gave up, because we kept hearing the voices on the outside, and the voices that says, why would you do that? In this economy, you're really going to go pursue that? And the question of doubt started kind of invading our mind. Maybe we should, maybe we couldn't, maybe it's not meant for us. And then something flipped, and it was a values question. Like, well, what do we value? Well, we value this. We value making an impact. We value stepping forward with courage. Well, then who says that you can't? And so we changed our playlist. Right? There's plenty of chatter out there, plenty of noise out there, plenty of voices out there, and some of it's our own voice that's detracting us and telling us that we can't, that we shouldn't, that we won't. Guys, when that message happens, when you hear that, those are values speaking to you. And this is where, like, I'm going back to your word, alignment. This is where alignment is critical. Get aligned. Work on that playlist. Do you need to change out some messages there, some thoughts?
I mean, this is why millions of people read the Bible, right? Because they're looking for something that gives them clarity, gives them encouragement, gives them a message that they can share to themselves, if you will, right? A lot of people use scripture and they repeat that scripture, and it changes you. Those values result in a behavioral change. And if you want to change your environment, then you want to change your behavior. How are you going to change your behavior? Make sure your values are right.
Yeah.
Be clear on those values. Make them a playlist. Play that playlist, right? That really will. Again, I'm preaching to the choir. You know this, Barry, but
no, but it's an important point in the big picture, right? Because we've all heard the expression, where your focus goes, your energy flows.
Yeah.
So that plays right into this idea of a playlist. You know, what are you putting into your mind? Go back to Tremendous Jones quote, the books you read. Okay, well, it's a different day and age now, right? We got a lot more than books to create a playlist, you know, so there's a lot of different ways we can put information into our mind. My question is, whose playlist are we listening to? You know, because there's a lot of people out there who think they got the playlist. Well, yeah, maybe they do, but they got their playlist.
Their playlist, not yours.
That's right. That's right. So to me, that's the big question. And I think for some folks, they don't have their playlist. They don't have a playlist.
Yeah.
You know? And so what are they playing? They're playing somebody else's. They're playing maybe what they think theirs is. And then they wonder why they're struggling, you know, and it all goes back to this idea of values, because that's the foundation. And they get the folks are out there, they don't have a foundation that they can build their playlist off. It just makes it that much harder. So we can try and be the superheroes and lay out some playlists and give some suggestions. But at the end of the day, it's to each his own. You know, it's your why. It's not anybody else's, you know, and I may want, you know, I may be value responsibility, right? Ownership. I'm a big ownership guy, you know, so that's definitely one that's been right up there in my top 5. You know, be responsible. And then, so again, I could say responsible, I say ownership, you know, which one is it? Well, to me, it's the same thing. You know, when you own something, you are responsible for it, and, you know, own it, own your decisions, own who you are. Some people don't even want to do that, you know, so it's tough. You've gotta, I think that's why, for me anyway, it's hard to land on these 5, because which 5 are going to be the most powerful for me? Which 5 are going to be the ones that are going to give me the most clarity? Which are going to be the 5 that help me to make the best decisions? And that's important to me. You know, I want this to be a tool and a resource. You know, you and I are all about tools and resources. What can we use to help others, to help ourselves? And to me, this is one of those, you know, it's filters. Again, you guys hear me use that word all the time, but this is another filter we can use in our life. Does it align with my core values?
Yeah, I would say I love that, because these values, once you've identified it, it's the best tool it may be the best tool you have. It may be that one tool that'll get you out of the rut. Right. So I think this is really, I found this cool definition of values. I want to share this with you. Dr. Russ Harris. I had never heard of him, but he wrote a book called The Happiness Trap. And I did a little poll on this book, not necessarily a book that I would be drawn to initially because, you know, happiness trap, right? But I was really enthralled with it. I thought he had some good points, and he shares this. He says he defines values. This is how he defines it. Desired qualities of action, how you want to behave, how you want to treat yourself, others, and the world around you. And I like that, because once you get your values, the truth of it is you've got to take action on it. And it may take a little bit of courage. It may mean that you have to get out of your comfort zone. If your values are all about being in a comfort zone, you got the wrong values. You're going to be stuck. So I want to make sure I've got values that push me a little bit, that they're qualities of action. It's how I want to behave, how I want to treat myself and treat other people around me. So I think I love that definition, but I don't know your thoughts on that.
And I love the way you frame that up, because I want to do this, I want to do that. And I think it's important to note, because another one kind of toying around with my top 5 is commitment, the value of commitment. Why is that part of my part of my top 5? Because it's something I really need to work on. It's something historically I've been, start this, not finish it, get, shiny squirrel, and I'll jump into this again. And then, make a commitment, not get it done. And, definitely not been my strength. And so as I've kind of gone through some of this process, it's like, all right, it doesn't have to be something, it's almost better that it's not just a bunch of stuff you're really good at. What do you really value? And so I don't think it's unusual or bad to think that you can't value something that, you're not as strong as you'd like to be in, if it's that important to you, and then maybe making it more, right here, right?
Yeah.
Then maybe that becomes something you can kind of, again, grow into, live into. The goal is never the goal. The goal is who we become in achieving that goal. So if you've got a goal to live into, your core values, man, don't be afraid to put something in there that you're not quite where you want to be. I mean, we shouldn't be. We should always be trying to grow, go faster and farther. Do it together.
Love it. All right. So, man, this has been a great conversation. You and I could talk about values probably for another hour.
Yes.
But I think we need to land the plane on this. And we want to encourage you guys. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening to the Breaking Average podcast. We hope we're adding value to you. And we're focused on the word values today. So as you're listening to this, maybe there's a great takeaway for you that you can apply. Maybe there's a change in your playlist, in your soundtracks that you're playing that you can leverage and use. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But also just head on over to our website, breakingaverage.com. Follow Barry on Twitter. What's your favorite social media? Is it Instagram, Twitter? I don't even know.
I don't know if I got a favorite. I mean, I probably see Facebook. Facebook is just, seems like everything's always going on there, but any of them.
Yeah. So find Barry.
We should do a podcast on that.
Yeah, we could. But follow Barry. He's there to add value to you, and follow me. We want to connect with you guys, but check us out on the Breaking Average website. But so Barry, tip and challenge for folks here as they try to live with more clear values. What's your tip and challenge?
Yeah, I think the tip is, look, values are important to me. They're your foundation. They're your playbook for life. Everything should really route through them. My challenge is, like you kind of mentioned earlier, Paul. Oh yeah, here's Paul and Barry talking about values. We've all heard 100 things about values. Do we really need to hear any more about values? I think you do. I think none of us really take it as serious as we should, because it is that important to what we're doing, the decisions we make, the people we're hanging around. Man, I probably got more stories about lack of values and making the wrong choice, things that didn't align with my core values and where that landed me in my life. So my challenge is just spend a little more time in it. Maybe it's just podcast, maybe it's Googling values. There's plenty of information out there to dig around, but make that a point in your life to just get a little more squared away on what your core values truly are.
That's so good. I wrote down as you were sharing, nobody ever achieves success without being clear on their values.
Yeah. Great statement.
So here's a question for you to help you with your values, because this is important, guys. This is absolutely critical. And my dad instilled a soundtrack in me that was so important as a young kid when I was trying to learn to ride a bicycle. Barry, you remember that?
Yeah, one of my first concussion came through trying to ride a bicycle.
Right. And wasn't there doubt, at least for me, like, I'm not sure I can do this. Right. But he said something to me that I still remember. And he looked at me, kind of stared at me while he's holding the bike on the handlebars. And he says, who says you can't? Who says you can't? And then I shared the story of my wife, then girlfriend, who asked me a question, what do you hope for? Do you still have hope, was her question. But really, it's a powerful statement. What do you hope for? Who says you can't? Those two questions are prompts to reset your playlist. They're playlists in themselves when you think about it. right? Stepping up on stage. Michael Hyatt does this.
Yeah.
Or my wife went to a SCORE conference and she shared how he says, hey, who says you can't? All right. We mentioned Herb Brooks the other day with Jason Turbo, who says you can't? So use those 2 questions to help gather focus, guys. Clarify your values, be clear on that. Ask others about their values. Don't just do this for yourself. Do this for others. And Barry, I know you're working on your values there, and you've shared a few of those. I'm just going to share mine real quick for everybody. And here we go. First one, and again, we can unpack these another day, but I just wanted to share it with you. I want to put it out there. Speak your values. This is what I'm doing. I think it's important once you have your values to share it with other people. Here are mine. Number 1, keep growing. Keep growing. All right. This, I could tell a story, but it's about being growth oriented, not goal oriented. Number 2, connect with others. Really critical here. Number 3, live courageously. Live courageously. And I try to put people in my life who can help me do that. Number 4, break average. Guys, the bullets are going to come. All right. We're going to get shot at a few times, but we can get through it. We can find a way. We can break average. And number 5, be grateful. There's always something to be grateful for.
Always.
So those are my 5 values, and it kind of keeps me tuned. It's important. It helps me. Some days I have bad days, but you know what? If I can go back to my values, I can work on my playlist. I can turn kind of a rainy day into a pretty bright day. So
love that.
Final words as we close this off.
Great list, brother.
Thank you.
That's just, I love the way you turn them all into action, right? I think, that's another one of my 5 is probably going to be take action. I think it was action, but after listening to you, it's going to become take action. Action's kind of action, I get it, but to take action, be intentional. You got to do that. You got to do that to move forward. A lot of people are happy with inactivity.
Yeah.
You've got a great list there, my friend. So again, everybody challenge, put some time into this, come up with your top 5, give it a shot.
We would love to see your values, your 1, your 2, your 5, whatever you got. Share it with us. You know what? Because your values might encourage somebody else.
There you go.
All right, guys, join us next week. Again, we got another great podcast to come, man. This is going to be awesome, but we've enjoyed this one. I hope you've gotten value out of it. Barry, thank you again for, taking the co-host seat on this one. And I'm glad we could have this discussion on values.
Anytime.
See you guys.
Take care, everybody.
Thank you for listening to the Breaking Average podcast. If you loved what you heard, please take a moment to subscribe. This show was produced by R Squared Multimedia. All opinions and comments expressed in this podcast are those of the participants and do not reflect the opinions or views of any of the advertisers, producers, or platforms. As you continue your day, what is one action that you can apply from this podcast to your life? Tune in for our next episode as we continue to challenge everyone to break average.
Welcome to the Breaking Average podcast. I am with, let me start that one over. Totally get thumbs up.
And we'll be right back.
And we'll be right back. There's a blooper.
You can have outtakes now.
What's that? Yeah, we got
Man, thanks for joining us. Have a great day.
Yep. Come back again. It gets better.